Hello, everyone. Welcome to a special session of model tests. Why are we doing this now? As all of you know, it is the much awaited NET exam on the 14th of June. And you have all studied a lot. You have all prepared well. Now it is time to revise and go and rock in the exam. That is why we have a special model test today. Every day until the exam, I'll be meeting you at 9 p.m. Please join me in YouTube live. And also, after that, right away, we will have a Telegram poll in our Telegram group. Okay, guys, here we go. Model test 1. Guys, the first question. Which of these works did Neeraj C. Chowdhury call the finest novel in the English language with an Indian theme? Neeraj C. Chowdhury is saying the finest novel in an Indian language, in the English language with an Indian theme. Which is this? Is it Kim by Rudyard Kipling? Or is it A Passage to India? Is it Train to Pakistan? Or Private Life of an Indian Prince? It cannot be an Indian writer because he's saying finest novel in the English language with an Indian theme. So most probably it is not an Indian writer. So it could be Kim or A Passage to India. Tell me, what is the answer? You can type in the chat box. Neeraj C. Chowdhury called the finest novel in the English language with an Indian theme. It is Rudyard Kipling's Kim. Rudyard Kipling was the first English language writer to win the Nobel Prize. Kim was first serially published in McClure magazine at almost the same time as Heart of Darkness. This is early 19th century, 1901, 1902. Kim is an Irish orphan growing up in Lahore. And this is during the great game between the English and the Russians. This is like a spy game. Kim is confused whether to follow the spiritual side or the political side of life. There is a Lama whom he is the disciple of. That is Kim. Okay, next question to you. This poem is an elegy. Remember, guys, this poem is an elegy for a young soldier killed in South Africa during the Second Boer War. At about the time Kim is written, the Second Boer War between the English and the Dutch settlers of South Africa happened. Which is this poem? The poem is an elegy for a young soldier. Is it Drummer Hodge by Thomas Hardy? Christ and the Soldier by Siegfried Sassoon? Even these titles could be useful in the exam. In Flanders Fields, it is also a war poem by John McCrae. On Being Asked for a War Poem. Did you know that? It is written by W.B. Yeats. You might know this one. It is the famous poem by Thomas Hardy, Drummer Hodge, written during the Second Boer War, that is 1899 to 1902. It was first published as The Dead Drummer. Later, it came to be called Drummer Hodge, and it is part of Thomas Hardy's Poems of the Past and the Present. Remember, there's another war poem by Thomas Hardy that is very famous. It is The Dinahs, set against the Napoleonic Wars. Like in many of his poems, Thomas Hardy is using stark irony here. Okay, next question to you. In which novel of Charles Dickens, remember guys, Charles Dickens novels, does the protagonist remember how he had been a child's Tom Jones, a harmless creature in his childhood? Ironically, the protagonist of this novel is saying, The protagonist is remembering. So it has to be written in the first person. Type in the chat box, which are the two novels written by Charles Dickens in the first person? It is Great Expectations and David Copperfield's. It cannot be Hard Times or Oliver Twist. Did you understand? Charles Dickens is writing two novels in first person. And the answer is, oh, is it Hard Times? Charles Dickens, it is not. Isn't it David Copperfield? What is this? Sorry, guys. It is in David Copperfield that the protagonist is remembering how he had been a child's Tom Jones, a harmless creature. Now, in which of his poems did William Morris go back to Chaucer's way of using verse for storytelling? William Morris is a pre-Raphaelite poet. He is using Chaucer's way of storytelling. And this book that he wrote is supposed to be a continuation of Chaucer's Canterbury Tales. Which is the book? William Morris's Earthly Paradise. The Earthly Paradise is by William Morris. Did you know, guys? It is an epic poem. It's a lengthy collection of retellings. This Earthly Paradise, it has many retellings of myths and legends. And it is almost written like Chaucer's Canterbury Tales. Is that clear? Okay. Who among the following dismissed Ulysses as a misfire? In our encyclopedia, I have given, this person said Ulysses is a book written by an adolescent picking his pimples. A queasy adolescent picking his pimples. Ayyo, that's a great insult, isn't it? Who dismissed Ulysses thus? Tell me in the chat box. Many of you know it. It is Virginia Woolf. It is Virginia Woolf who talked about Ulysses as not a great novel because she did not appreciate it. D.H. Lawrence also did not appreciate it. But Virginia Woolf appreciated James Joyce. Virginia Woolf said that herself and James Joyce are spiritualists, while Arnold Bennett and Galsworthy are materialists. She appreciated James Joyce for writing about the psychology of characters. Okay, sixth question. It is an easy question. 2 cantos from the 7th book of the Fairy Queen appeared posthumously. They are known as dash. And in these 2 cantos, there is the value or virtue of constancy. Constancy. It is Mutability cantos. It is considered as the 7th book of Fairy Queen. And it was first published in 1609, at which time in 1609, our Shakespeare sonnets were also published. Mutability canto. Next question. Who is the writer of Golpita? Have you heard of that? Golpita. It is a very important poetry collection of Dalit literature. Golpita. Who is the author of Golpita? Is it Baby Kamble? Is it Sharmila Rage? Is it Namdev Dhazal or Rajani Tilak? I told you the answer. It is Namdev Dhazal. He is one of the very important writers in Marathi literature. And Golpita is an anthology collection of poetry representing the traumas of the subaltern subject about the people oppressed by the mainstream castes, isn't it? And this poetry collection written by Namdev Dhazal, he is a very important leader of the Dalit Panthers, and he laid the foundations of Dalit poetry with this text. Today itself, please make a list of all the Dalit writers and their major works. It could be very important for you in the exam. All right, here is another interesting novel that all of you know. It is about Mulk Raj Anand's Dickensian novel, Coolie. Munnu, the protagonist. Everybody knows Munnu is the protagonist of Coolie, isn't it? What is Munnu? Is he an Indian prince? No way. That is not we know. Is he an orphan from Kangra? Maybe. Is he a porter at Bombay railway station? Maybe. He's a worker in the tea plantations of Assam. Which of these is Munnu? When was Coolie published? 1 year after Untouchable. It is in 1936. Coolie represents the story of an orphan from Kangra. He's only like 14 years old and he is working as a coolie in the grain market and at St. George, Sir George White cotton mills. Finally, when he is hit by Mrs. Mainwaring's car at Malabar Hills, he is serving Mrs. Mainwaring and finally dying. That is the story. It is social realism, like Charles Dickens' novels. Charles Dickens wrote Oliver Twist, etc. like this. He is an orphan. Once again, remember, he is an orphan at first raised by his aunt and uncle. He enjoys going to school and playing and all that, but very soon he has to leave that house and go to another house where BBG is torturing him. Babu Nathuram's house. And from there to Prabhadayal's pickle factory. And like that, his journey, his saga is going on until he dies very soon. As a child itself, he dies. So this is the story of Munnu. Textual questions from major classics like this can be expected. In the remaining 2-3 days, just take a quick look at all the classics and whatever you have forgotten, you should revise based on this. Okay, guys. What is the meaning of the title of the poem, Out of the Cradle, Endlessly Rocking? It is a major poem by Walt Whitman, American literature. American literature is not very, very important, but there can be questions based on American literature. This poem, Out of the Cradle, Endlessly Rocking, was written in 1859, the same year as Darwin's Origin of Species was published. And as you know, it was published in Leaves of Grass eventually. Out of the Cradle, Endlessly Rocking is a birth of the poet genre, is a poem in the birth of the poet genre. That means a poet is born, a young boy is undergoing some experience and he is awakening into being a poet. That is the meaning. It's a very romantic genre. Wordsworth has written it. So what is the meaning of the title? Is it the triumph of eternal life over death? Is it the continuation of eternal life cycle? Triumph of death over life. Inevitable death. Actually, a little bit of all these themes are there in the poem. Which of these is the real most important theme? It is triumph of eternal life over death. The cradle is the sea, the ocean. The ocean waves are like the cradle. And when the boy asks nature, what is the reason for the trauma of the bird? He gets the whisper, death. So it is a cradle and death both brought together. Even though we are dying, there is eternal life. That is the meaning. Did you understand the poem, guys? It is very, very important poem of Walt Whitman. Can you type in the chat box the other important poems of Walt Whitman? Very good. Song of Myself. Song of the Open Road. When lilacs last in the dooryard bloomed. Oh, Captain, my Captain. Yes, this is an opportunity to remember the other poems of Walt Whitman. He wrote a lot of poems for Abraham Lincoln. Next question is from theory, but easy question. Remember, guys, in the exam, many questions are general knowledge questions that you can easily answer by relaxing, looking at the question and reading the words. It is not about knowledge. It is about common sense and language most of the time. So don't panic. Just read the question, relaxed, read the question and answer. Which of the following features do not make the theme of Diaspora? Do not make the theme of Diaspora. Is there nostalgia, memory, and imaginary homelands? Yes. Is there hybridity and new identity? Yes. Is there globalization and cosmopolitanism? You might hesitate a little there, but look at the next one. Deep patriotism and love for one's own country. That is the answer. Deep patriotism is against literary theory. Literary theory does not accept deep patriotism. Did you understand, guys? Okay, I will ask you another question quiz now. Okay, type in the chat box, both Zoomers and YouTubers. I'm going to tell you the names of some diasporic books. You should identify them. It is a collection of short stories by Jhumpa Lahiri, published in 1999. Bolo bolo. A collection of short stories by Jhumpa Lahiri, published in 1999. It is Interpreter of Maladies. Their Interpreter of Maladies, Mr. Kapasi. I have told you this one day. It's a collection of 9 short stories that reads like a novel almost. Okay. Have you heard of Animals People? Animals People. Animal is actually a young man. Animal. It is not an animal, but a young man's name. Animals People is by Indra Sinha. Indra Sinha. Okay. Like this, there are many other novels and authors that we might not know. I'm just reminding you. Who wrote Inheritance of Loss? Everybody knows. Type, type, type. Who wrote Inheritance of Loss? Because it is Kiran Desai. Who wrote The In-Between World of Vikram Lal? Diasporic novel. The In-Between World of Vikram Lal. It is M.G. Vasanji. Okay? Very good. Now, the 11th question. The story of Keats' Lamia. What is the story of Keats' Lamia? There is a woman who is actually a serpent. So it's a very medieval, frightening story. A god called Hermes is in love with a nymph. He's searching for the nymph and comes across a serpent. Serpent says, give me human form. I will find you the nymph. Are you following me, guys? Don't panic. Don't get stressed. Just enjoy all this. So where is this story taken from, guys? It is taken from Burton's Anatomy of Melancholy. Robert Burton's Anatomy of Melancholy, written under the pseudonym Democritus Jr. Isn't it? Very good. Okay, 12th question. Errors like straws upon the surface flow. He who would search for pearls must dive below. Where do you find these lines? It cannot be the prelude. This is not blank verse. Flow below. There is rhyme. It is heroic couplet. It has to be heroic couplet. Neoclassical writer. It cannot be Rasselas because Rasselas is prose. Is it All for Love or Essay on Criticism? It is All for Love by Dryden. All for Love by Dryden is written in blank verse. It is the story of Antony and Cleopatra, isn't it, guys? So, next question. Who among the following is not a member of the Yale School of Deconstruction? In the 1970s and 80s, the Yale School became very prominent. Is it Paul D. Mann, J. Hillis Miller, Harold Bloom, or Jacques Derrida? And no. Some of you will see deconstruction and say Harold Bloom is the answer. Harold Bloom is not deconstructionist. He is reader response critic, you will say. Some of you. But that is wrong. Harold Bloom was associated with Yale School of Deconstruction. Paul D. Mann, J. Hillis Miller, Harold Bloom, Jeffrey Hartman, all are Yale School people. Derrida was a visiting professor there, but he is not technically part of Yale School because Yale School is a group of people inspired by Derrida. So Derrida is not technically part of Yale School. Did you know, guys, Deconstruction and Criticism is a very important book brought out by the Yale School. Deconstruction and Criticism. And did you know, guys, Barbara Johnson is also partly associated with the Yale School. So answer is Jacques Derrida. Jacques Derrida. Now look at this. All the world is a stage and all the men and women merely players. These lines occur in Shakespeare's As You Like It. Which character utters this speech? Is it Touchstone, Oliver, banished Duke, or Jaques, the melancholy philosopher? It is not Jacques, it is Jaques. Which of these characters uttered this speech? It is Jaques, the melancholy philosopher. This is a famous monologue of Jaques called The 7 Ages of Man. And Mulk Anand wanted to write a series of autobiographies based on the 7 stages or 7 ages of man. Remember? Very good. Who proposed the transactional theory that gave importance to reader as well as writer? Who proposed the transactional theory? It is a part of reader response criticism. Reader response criticism is a group of many theories. Don't you know that? There is Harold Bloom, Stanley Fish, Norman Holland, David Bleich, Louis Rosenblatt, and transactional theory that gives importance to the transaction between reader and writer. It is Louis Rosenblatt who proposed this theory. Okay, guys, who among the following had the opinion that language has a bipolar structure? Somebody said that language has a bipolar structure, oscillating between the 2 poles of metaphor and metonymy. You know that one, don't you? Who said that language has 2 poles, metaphor and metonymy? He said this in the book, 2 Aspects of Language and 2 Types of Aphasic Disturbances. It is Roman Jakobson. It's a 1956 essay. 2 Aspects of Language and 2 Types of Aphasic Disturbances. He proposed here that language oscillates between the metaphoric pole and the metonymic pole. Metaphoric pole is one of selection. Metonymic pole is one of combination. And later, Lacan said this is how, like Freud said, this is how mind also works. Freud also talked about the mind like this. Metaphor is condensation. Metonymy is displacement. Condensation and displacement. Are you loving this, guys? Please don't forget to like the video. Have you all subscribed? You should all subscribe, okay? Please do. In the second ending of John Fowles's novel, The French Lieutenant's Woman, there are 3 endings. In the second ending, Charles Smithson's lawyer finds out that Sarah has been living in the house of Dash. In the house of a very famous writer, Sarah Woodruff has been living. Who is that? It is D.G. Rossity. She has been working as D.G. Rossity's assistant. This is in the second ending of John Fowles' The French Lieutenant's Woman. Bakhtin formulated the concept of polyphony and dialogism, as all of you know. Bakhtin formulated the concepts of polyphony and dialogism. In which book? Ta-da-dang! Remember, Bakhtin was somewhat associated with Russian formalism. But Bakhtin also is not fully a Russian formalist. He is also like a structuralist. Which is that work? It is Problems of Dostoevsky's Art. He compares Dostoevsky with Tolstoy. Remember that, guys? And it is in Rabelais and His World that he discussed carnivalesque. The concept of carnivalesque. Never be mean in anything. Never be false. Never be cruel. Who gave this advice to David in David Copperfield? It is Betsy Trotwood, his aunt, who gave this advice to David in David Copperfield. Betsy Trotwood. And 20th question, Canto 4 of Childe Harold's Pilgrimage is about Byron's travels in... Canto 4 of Childe Harold's Pilgrimage is about Byron's travels in... Rome. Byron traveled in Rome. That is what it is about. Okay, so all the best, guys. We have covered a lot of questions. Please read a little bit extra also. I will be back tomorrow with more such awesome questions. Until then, it is bye-bye. Please join us in Telegram group for our quiz right now, Telegram poll.